And a very good evening to you. I am Lisa Lord, and my special guest is responsible for one of the island's biggest manufacturers. He's the president of Lenstec Barbados Inc., Dr. Ian Hinkling. Dr. Hinkling, thank you so much for joining us on your program.
Good evening, Lisa. How are you?
I'm very well. And yourself?
I'm well, although I'm not quite comfortable with being called doctor yet, so Ian is fine.
Ian is fine, or Mr. Hinkling is fine.
Sure.
Wonderful. Now, you are one of the University of the West Indies Cayfield campus honorary degree recipients this year. So first of all, congratulations on your award of Doctor of Science.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome again. Just to give viewers and listeners some background regarding Lenstec, it manufactures and distributes a wide range of intraocular lens implants and lens injection systems to more than 60 countries around the world. So a very massive operation from right here in Christchurch. But before we get to Lenstec, I want to look at the early life and career of Mr. Ian Hinkling. You were born and raised in New Zealand. So tell us about your life there and what it was like growing up in New Zealand.
Well, my parents were both from England, and they migrated in the early 1960s. So I was born there and have always considered myself a Kiwi. New Zealand is the kind of place where you, as a child, are carefree. You never wore shoes. You're always outside running around, playing in the forest, in the bush, or at the beach, or something like that. A bit different to here. It is a place where traditionally at Christmas you go to the beach. The first time I ever had a white Christmas was in the 1970s, and it was terrible. We went to England and it was dark and cold, and so coming to Barbados actually is quite nice because Christmases here are cool, but they're beach time things. So.
And you have one sibling, a sister?
I have a younger sister. Yeah, she's a year and a half younger, and she still lives in Auckland.
And what was it like going to school there?
Going to school was fun. It was always fun. You were always playing games outside. Whereas my own kids, they play outside at school, but it's hot here. There it was always nice, so you'd be running around all the time.
Now, you would complete all of your education, tertiary level education at the University of Auckland. You did a bachelor's in cell biology and biochemistry and a master's in biochemistry. I have to ask, why biochemistry?
I don't know. Nobody's ever asked that before. It was a subject I loved. I was always someone who loved playing with test tubes and things like that. But chemistry is a bit dangerous, and so biochemistry is much nicer. You're dealing with cells, and so my first job, I ended up being a separation chemist. So we're going to the freezing works, the abattoirs, and finding high-value chemicals that could be isolated from the waste streams of abattoirs. So, for example, bile acids, which come from the gallbladder, they would be isolated and made into bile salts, which became the backbone for steroid drugs around the world. Heparin, which is something that we got from sheep intestine, was isolated and purified and used in surgical operations. Ferritin, which came from the spleen, that was used as an iron supplement. So it was like playing. It was a continuation of being a child and running around. It was just running around playing with test tubes and things.
Even up to the master's level?
Even up to the master's level, yep.
And your work life upon completing university would have started at New Zealand Pharmaceutical?
Yes, although I think as a kid in New Zealand you often got a paper round when you were very young. I then went and applied for a job at the supermarket when I was 15, as soon as I could work. So I earned some pocket money after school. Right through university, I was still working in the supermarket after hours. So that's where I got some of the work ethic as well. And at New Zealand Pharmaceuticals, I walked in one day and I was immediately given a long bench and a desk to sit at and a couple of projects, which was, okay, go and try and isolate this chemical from this organ. which was really what I'd done in my research as well.
Right.
So research for my master's involved, you've probably heard of the runner's high. If you're a runner, you go running and eventually they just get euphoric, and it's from a thing called an enkephalin or an endorphin. And so I did my research on how that is released from the adrenal glands. So I worked for 2 years, basically playing with cow, sheep organs and isolating chemicals from them and purifying them. So that was good. I got a lot more experience in the laboratory and a lot more research experience. And then I moved on to another company called Douglas Pharmaceuticals in Auckland, which was a generic pharmaceutical manufacturer. And what we did was we copied all of the expensive drugs that came into the country. And so a team of 2 or 3 of us, we spent 5 years just copying tablets, capsules, inhalers, nasal sprays, sunscreens, soaps, all sorts of things. So again, playing in the lab. And it's what I try and tell my scientists here, that, you know, research should be a fun occupation.
But most people find labs daunting.
I think they do. And I think it's because people, especially in Barbados, people are afraid of failing. And if you fail, you feel like you've failed as a person. But I keep telling everyone here that failure is something which you should expect 95% of the time in science. You're not going to design an experiment and it works first time.
Yeah.
You have to take, you pick yourself up, dust yourself off. What can I learn from that experiment? And then you turn the corner and go for the next one. And so it's not an embarrassment to fail. If we're making intraocular lenses for people's eyes here, they have to be right. You can't have a failure there. But our systems are built so that we make mistakes, we learn from them, but those mistakes are never allowed out of the door. So that's why we've turned this company from a company that makes lenses that everybody makes to probably the most technologically advanced lenses in the world.
And we'll come back to the operations of Lenstec, but going back to your early years now, you worked for an NGO in Eritrea and Nepal. You're setting up medical device factories making lenses for cataract operations. This would have been between 1993 and 1996. And what was that experience like?
That was amazing. I had been asked to work in the weekends, flying to Australia, which was a 3.5-hour flight. And I would fly there every weekend, get on the plane after work, get to Sydney in Australia. In the evening, Saturday, Sunday was spent training this group of people from Eritrea in what we call good manufacturing practice, how you make devices, how you make pharmaceuticals. And then I'd fly back and go back to work on a Monday morning. So I did that for 6 months. And at the end, the Eritrean people, so Eritrea is in the Horn of Africa, the people there said to me, look, we want you to come and help us set the factory up. And I said, no, I'm not interested in doing that. I already have a life in New Zealand. And they eventually talked me into it. They said, look, we'll get you an Eritrean wife. And I said, I have no need for an Eritrean wife. But eventually I decided to go to Eritrea. I asked my dad at the time, and he said, well, if you go and it doesn't work out, you can always come back. If you go and it does work out, it will be, the world is your oyster. And if you don't go, you'll always wonder. So
yeah,
that was
what if, yeah.
So that was what made me. It was a scary decision at the time, but it's the kind of pivotal decision that everybody should make in their lives. It's easy to take the soft option. It's easy to take the no-risk decision. And some people will be happy taking the no-risk decision. But I decided that I didn't want to spend my life wondering what if. And look, here I am in Barbados, so it's worked out pretty well.
And you did go to Eritrea and you did meet your wife of 26 years.
I do have an Eritrean wife now, yeah.
So it did work out.
Yep, it did.
In 1996, the work in Eritrea was coming to an end, and you got an offer for a short-term position to start up a commercial lens factory here in Barbados. By that time, you and Ida were engaged, and you made a big decision to come here to an island that you had never even visited because your plan was to go back to New Zealand.
Correct. Yep. So it was the beginning of winter in New Zealand, and I was overseas commuting between Nepal and Eritrea. And that work, we just finished those two factories. And it was a matter of, I'd been called up by the person who set up Lenstec. And he said, can you come and help me for a month? So I came over to help set up the factory and get what was in those days called ISO 9001, which is an international quality certificate. And on the first day that we arrived here, we were staying in Atlantic Shores in Christchurch. And so we drove down to Enterprise Beach, walked along the beach at 6 in the morning, and he said to me, well, would you consider staying a bit longer? And I went, well, yeah, I'll stay longer. I think he chose the right place to ask. And so, yeah, we're still here 27 years later.
You automatically fell in love with the island.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was the adjustment like? Because for both you and your wife, your fiance at the time, you're coming from completely different cultural backgrounds.
I think it was easy because I was coming from the first world, having lived in the third world. And she was coming from the third world, and we felt it would be a good stepping stone coming to Barbados, which was, it has elements of third world and first world. And so they used to call it the second world in those days. And so it was great. And also because in our minds we were coming for a short time, you can treat it like a holiday. So any Bajan knows if you meet a tourist, they come in here, they have a totally different outlook on life because they know they're only here for 2 weeks. If you live here for a long time, you see different aspects of the culture here. So it was an easy transition because we thought we were on holiday.
I know you said it was an easy adjustment, but did you not have a culture shock?
Oh yeah, there's always a culture shock. First and foremost was how hot it was. And we were living in a house which wasn't air conditioned. And so the heat and the mosquitoes were unbearable. But again, it was a transition. My wife started at BCC doing English as a foreign language, which enabled her to really improve her English quite fast. We were also living with one of my colleagues at the time. There's 2 foreigners here at Lenstec, myself and a French guy. We were all living together. And in the weekends, we would take our little Suzuki van and take a cooler out, and we'd drive around the island all weekend. So to us, it was a way of getting to know the place. Culture shock, I don't remember feeling bad about anything. It was just one of those, wow, this is so cool. So I remember one night we decided we would go to St. David's. And we ended up in a bar having a few beers on a Friday night and ended up talking cricket all night, which was one of my favourite passions. And, I was amazed again.
As a Kiwi supporter, that had to be interesting.
Oh, it was great. But I was amazed how knowledgeable Bajans were about cricket.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So now Sir Gary Sobers is one of our next door neighbours. So, that is, for a young kid from the west of Auckland to come and to live nearby one of my greatest ever heroes is just
and one of our national
amazing.
Heroes.
Absolutely, yeah.
You came to Barbados for what was supposed to be a short-term stay to set up this company properly. However, how long after you got here did you realize this might be where I will stay for quite a while?
We haven't realised that yet.
26 years later.
Yes, we haven't realised that yet. It just, every day it dawns on us a bit more.
And then you would have 3 children here.
3 children. So we got married in St. John's Parish Church.
Beautiful church.
Oh, I love going there. So I cycle a lot, and every Saturday we go up there and stop. We had more people in the choir than in the congregation. So it was just, you know, continuation of that magical period, which I think every tourist sees in Barbados. You know, there's a certain magic about the place, and we were still living in that magic. And at the time, trying to grow a company, trying to start and grow a company.
And like I said, you were growing your family as well.
Yeah, that we got married in December 96, and the first child came along in 2001. So we had fun before the kids arrived.
Clearly. So they had one daughter, two sons.
Yep, yep.
Two children at university.
Yes.
And one at secondary school here.
Yes, yep. So all three of them have been through St. Gabriel's Primary School, and then all three of them got into Harrison College. So we're pretty proud of that. And it's something that foreigners always ask, well, what's the education system like? Well, the fact that our kids got into very good universities, I think, shows that the education system here can be extremely good at the primary level and at the secondary level. Tertiary level also, we have a lot of graduates here at Lenstec, and the theoretical knowledge that they get at UWI is very good as well.
And you said that Barbados is actually perfect for raising a family.
I think so, yeah. Yeah. It's a very expensive place, as everybody will know, but once you can afford to live here, it's a perfect place for kids, because they have a certain tolerance that they get from mixing with lots of different races. There's also a certain confidence that they get from the beach culture, perhaps, the ability to do lots of things here. And I think the education system, particularly at St. Gabriel's, it gave a really good tolerance of other people. So our kids have got friends from all sorts of walks of life, and that's carried on as they've moved into our daughter lives in Boston. She's doing a master's now, and her friends, all sorts of different peoples and races. She gets on with everybody. My son, he's in London in Canada, and he lives with people, Nigerian, Chinese, Koreans, all sorts. So yeah.
And I'll come back to the education system and your relationship with the UWI Cable Campus a little later, since you touched on it. But placing focus on Lenstec Barbados Inc. It is a subsidiary of Lenstec Corporation, and this is a commercial medical device company based in Florida. Now, the company opened its global manufacturing facility here in Barbados in 1995. You came a few months after to set up the company, to assist with its setting up. It manufactures, as I said, intraocular lens, which are artificial replacements for the natural ones removed during cataract surgery. I want you to go into as much technical detail, because I don't think the average Barbadian understands the magnitude of the work you do here at Lenstec.
Right. So cataract surgery, well, let's start with a cataract. A cataract, I don't know if I can use this model.
Sure.
Okay. So the cataract, if you look at the eye, and I'll just chop the top off the eye here. The whole purpose of the eye is it's essentially a camera. And what it does is it focuses light rays onto the back of the retina. So the retina is what collects the light and then turns it into an electrical impulse which goes to the brain. And so there are two parts which do the bending of light. The front, the cornea, does about 80% of the bending of light. And then the lens, which sits slightly, well, just behind the iris, that does the remaining 20%. And the purpose of the lens is to focus between distance and near. So when you are what we call accommodating, that lens is changing its shape. Now, with age, the contents, this is a membrane bag, and with age, the contents, which start out as a clear gel, they will opacify. They'll turn white initially, then turn brown, then turn black, and turn into initially a hardened substance and then eventually an oily substance. And the ancient Egyptians found that if you can just knock this out of position, like down there, then all that light gets back onto the camera again. It's just you can't focus. So what we do these days is we do a very, very small incision in the eye. We cut the front off this bag, liquefy the contents, take it out, and we inject in a very small lens. So most people don't know what they're going for. I'm going for cataract surgery, but they don't really know what's going on. It is probably the most successful type of surgery that there is, and it's done very, very well here in Barbados. There's probably a couple of thousand surgeries a year done here. And the quality of surgery here is extremely good as well. As everybody knows, we have a lot of surgeons, a lot of doctors in this country. But as you can see, that lens is now going right back inside the eye. And that's what we tell all of our staff here. Just imagine that what you're making, this product, although and they look sort of like that, obviously much smaller, but these lenses that we make are effectively a replacement human organ, and they're going inside your eye. So when we get new people on staff, we tell them immediately, just imagine it's your grandmother going in for surgery, and you're not going to give them a bad product. So you'll find, walking around, you'll talk to the staff here, and they are extremely proud of what they do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go into some more detail about the type of lens that you produce here.
Okay, so the initial lenses were made in the 1950s by an English surgeon, and he realized that the canopies in fighter jets were made of a thing called perspex, and that perspex sometimes got shot up in the Battle of Britain, and he noticed these shards of the perspex went into people's eyes, and there was no problem with it. There was no immune reaction or anything. So he decided, okay, I'm going to try and make some lenses from that material. That material is called an acrylate, and it is hard. It looks like a pane of glass. And so it's very easy to make a lens out of that using a lathe and implanting that in the eye. The trouble is, if you're making a lens out of something which is like glass, it's quite big. It's about 1 centimeter across, and you have to put that into the eye. So you need an incision, which is very, very large. And that's all well and good. It gives you very good optical quality, but you still have this big incision, which is uncomfortable. What's happened in the last 20 or so years is that we've developed lenses which fold up. And so they can be rolled up very, very small, like a small pancake. You roll it up. And you can put it through a very small incision of about 2 or 3 millimeters in the cornea. And that cornea means that no longer, you don't need sutures anymore. There's no pain from it. It's a totally pain-free operation, and it's hugely successful.
And you are exporting to 60 countries across the world.
Yes.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's one of the benefits of Barbados, actually, because we're a tourist economy, and so we have lots of planes coming from overseas, and therefore it's easy for us to get our products anywhere in the world, and much easier than it would be from our parent company, which is in Florida, because we have far better transport links here. So our biggest customer is China at the moment, but we also sell a lot in America. The fact that we sell in America and in Europe means that our quality standards are the best in the world. So if you talk to our microbiologists, for example, our microbiology, which is the cleanliness of the lens, is probably 10 to 20 times better than what is required in industry. So we make superb lenses here.
Punching above your weight.
It's Bajans punching above their weight, to be honest, because out of the 250 people here, there's only 2 foreigners. So yeah, this is Bajans who have not only make them, but also do the research and design them and test them. So it shows that we can do things here. And it's been the focus of the government now is to try and use that model to build other industry here, pharmaceuticals, medical devices, etc.
Take me back to 1996, 1997, 1998. You are now starting up this company. You don't have the level of technology that you have now. How difficult was it to do certain things?
You have to remember that we started this as a private company, and we started with 4 employees, and we started with a small amount of money, and everything that we did, we had to finance ourselves from lens sales or sometimes selling shares in the company. So every day was a matter of balancing the books. We didn't have a government coming to us and saying, here you go, you can have lots of cash or anything like that. So for the first at least 18, 20 years of our existence, we didn't make a profit, because every dollar we made went right back into research and development. So I remember the first day we sold a lens, which was to one of the surgeons in Belleville. We had a party that day because we were so proud. And I think what happened was we then gradually got ourselves a network of distributors around the world. And we had one investor, which was a very large Japanese pharmaceutical company called Santen. They came in, invested some money, which enabled us to set up a brand new type of factory in the place, which was molding lenses. And so every day it was a matter of, okay, we can sell a few lenses, we can pay the staff, and we can invest this in research. It wasn't as though we came out on day one with selling hundreds of thousands of lenses. It's something that has been done organically. So we started off with 5,000 square feet in a BIDC industrial estate in Newton. A couple of years later, we went to 10,000 square feet, then 15,000. And then in 2010, we moved to this purpose-built facility where we have 30,000 square feet.
As an entrepreneur listening and watching you, you said it took you 18 to 20 years before you turned a profit. Most businesses or business people, when they start, they're running 2-3 years. If they don't make a profit, that's it. They're done.
Well, the difference is we were paying everybody, so everyone's receiving a paycheck. We invested every dollar. All the profit we made was immediately invested right back in research and expanding our markets as well. And that was because the people who did invest in the company were quite happy for us to build the size of the company. So I guess if you're talking profit, that means you're taking money out and spending expensive trips overseas and things. We were just interested in growing this business.
What were some of the early challenges?
The early challenges in those days were that, so we had an international business corporation license. Barbados had that IBC sector, which was mostly financial services. And we were really one of probably 2 or 3 manufacturers. Another one I can think of is Doyle Sales in Six Roads, St. Philip. And the government were not really, I don't think they'd thought of manufacture at the time. And whereas financial services provided a really good, what would you call it, a cash flow to government, so to enable the government to finance their own running, Lenstec was doing something different. We weren't, because we didn't make a profit, we weren't paying any tax. However, we had a much larger number of staff than most financial services companies, and therefore there was a lot of income tax being paid by our staff. Also, we were providing a lot of employment. So I remember initially we were in the Newton Industrial Estate. Most of the staff there were on seasonal work. They were working in hot factories, and it wasn't great quality work. And what we provided was permanent full-time employment, no seasonality. They got to wear a white coat and it was air conditioned, so people enjoyed coming to work. And I've found most of our staff are extremely proud of what they do. So having BIDC as our landlord was really useful. It enabled us to have contact with people who knew what they were talking about, how industry would develop in the country. At the time, people used to talk about the three challenges was customs, immigration, and telecommunications. Customs, it's important for us because most of our inputs, most of the raw materials come in from our factory in Florida. But that's something we've worked around. We're well known as a quality employer, and customs has never really been a problem to us. Immigration was similarly not a problem to us because we had a lot of Asian employees and only 2 foreigners. So it wasn't as if, I mean, in those days immigration was a lot of red tape, but it got done. So we worked on work permits. I mean, everyone knows if you wanted a police certificate, you had to go down and queue up and then get your fingers covered in blue ink and rub them on the walls and stuff like that. So the immigration screening procedures really only applied to 2 of us. So that wasn't really a problem. Telecoms, that was in the old days of cable and wireless. It's expensive, as is electricity here. But I think you'll find that, for example, the electricity, our people in Florida say that the electricity here is much more stable than it is in the States. So we don't really have a problem with that apart from the cost. So people ask, what's it like running a manufacturing business in Barbados? Well, I often say that I wouldn't choose to make T-shirts here because it's an expensive place. But we are competing with companies in California, Texas, Germany, the UK, and in recent years, India and China as well. So in terms of all of those countries except India and China, we have a substantially cheaper cost structure. So it works for medical devices, which is why over 20 years ago I wrote a white paper saying that we should be doing pharmaceuticals in this country. We have so much in the way of human capital in science, lots of UE graduates in science that don't really get great jobs. As the Prime Minister said the other day, she said she would like for science graduates to have more career choices than just being a teacher.
And the government is moving in that direction.
Absolutely, yeah. They're moving fast, and I think they're doing it the right way as well. They've seen an opportunity for growing the science-based industries here.
Okay. All right, Mr. Hinkling, still a lot more to chat about. Stay with us. You're watching One on One.
I want to get into the medicinal cannabis industry, but I don't know anything about it.
You don't need to touch the plant to get involved. There is a need for creative people who can do communications, branding, digital campaigns, and promotional strategies. You can help showcase the significant potential of cannabis products while staying compliant with the regulations. Do you know anyone who's an electrician? Employers in the medicinal cannabis industry have a demand for skilled electricians, particularly to handle the lighting and other electrical needs of indoor grow operations. Anybody with skills in project management or accounting, then employers might find those skills to be the ideal in this industry. Cannabis may be from the earth, but the business of medicinal cannabis can be decidedly high-tech, whether it's to improve infrastructure and systems or IT services while providing security. The medicinal cannabis industry needs you.
For more information, visit our website at www.bmcla.bb.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Danielle Reed Malilo and I'm a general physician, and today we're going to talk about knowing your risk for obesity. In Barbados overall, 2 out of 3 adults are overweight and 1 out of 3 adults are obese. Also in children, 1 in every 3 child is overweight or obese. There's some health parameters that you should know about yourself. These parameters are your blood pressure, your HbA1c and fasting blood sugar, your weight, and your BMI. At home, you should have a blood pressure monitor, a glucometer, which is a blood sugar machine, and a scale. And from time to time, you should document these readings, and you should also be familiar with these readings. You can also take a diary with the readings to your doctor so they can better help manage your condition.
The Coastal Zone Management Unit wishes to advise the public that the reefs along the coast of Barbados are currently experiencing coral bleaching. Coral bleaching is a phenomenon where corals lose their natural coloration and appear bright white as a consequence of stress. In this bleached state, corals are vulnerable and may die if bleaching persists. Given the elevated water temperatures we have seen in recent weeks, it is believed that the coral bleaching is due to heat stress. It is hoped that once temperatures return to normal, the corals will recover. The Coastal Zone Management Unit will continue to monitor the situation and update as required. Thank you.
Welcome back as we continue our discussion with the president of Lenstec Barbados Inc., Mr. Ian Hinkling. Mr. Hinkling, you would have indicated in the first half that the Barbados operation of Lenstec started with just 4 employees. In 2023, you have more than 250 employees. Now, you have said that much of Lenstec's success in Barbados is due to its association with the UWI Cavell campus and the quality of the graduates they are producing.
Yes, so in the early days, we were making what I call a Me Too lens. We were making the standard cataract lens that everybody else does. The trouble with making a standard cataract lens is that you have to compete on price. So we started off saying, okay, we have to compete on price, but let's also try and compete on speed of service and the quality of service. So we set from day one a mission statement that said we would really focus on getting our products to customers as quickly as possible and as painlessly as possible, which is enabled by our transport links here. But we realized to increase our average selling price, we needed to have really high-tech lenses. And that's why we've worked with UE since 1996 was the first time I went there, and they have enabled us to start up our own microbiology laboratory, our own sterilization facility for sterilizing lenses prior to them going in the eye, and all of our research and development activities. So we probably have 25 UWI graduates here, and they are engaged every day in developing new products and new ways of getting lenses into the eye. So we have some of the most technologically advanced lenses. So to get a little bit technical for a moment, if you imagine that this lens, which is currently inside the eye, is able to focus from distance to near by changing its shape. It changes its shape because it has some tiny little, almost strings, which attach from this muscle to the lens, and they will change the shape of the lens. We wanted to produce something which does something similar in the eye. Standard cataract lenses, the surgeon will measure your eye, and then you'll be given a lens which probably looks, 10 meters away. If you want to read a book, you have to get reading glasses. What we've been working on is producing lenses that they have the ability to focus here, which is reading a book, here, which is typing on a computer, and at distance as well. So that sort of lens opens up a brand new market. So instead of your 70 to 80-year-old patient, you've now got 50-year-old patients who have spent their entire lives wearing glasses, and they start to get a cataract, or they start to lose that ability to focus distance to near, and they now can have a lens put in their eye which will enable them to read and see at distance. So it's a massive opportunity which we've only been able to do because of our graduates from UE. Well, let's look at those UE graduates. Probably the first one was our IT manager. He's an expert in databases, and he, in this pretty sophisticated factory, we run 2 databases. One is a production control system which takes our sales, takes our inventory, looks at what people are ordering, looks at the ordering patterns, and it determines what needs to be launched. And then it will track every single batch through the process so that our production control staff can look at, hey, this order's just come in and I'm short of this batch of lenses, and they can prioritize it through the system. The other database is a database that every single lens we make has its own barcode and its own serial number. We've made close to 8 million lenses. So the database that runs those knows exactly where every single one of those lenses is. Now those two databases were written by a UWI graduate, who's our Vice President of IT. The research and development team has about 10 people, includes engineers, it includes chemists, microbiologists, and we have a risk management specialist as well. We also have a whole quality team who will be looking randomly at the production process. We have people involved in product process improvements. So they're looking at what we developed and made 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and constantly looking, how can we improve this process? How can we improve the product? And then we also have our microbiology lab, which has 3 full-time microbiologists. Again, everyone's from UWI.
And you have made a call for more companies to continue to invest in the Cave Hill campus.
Yeah, I believe so. There's a very good example. Many years ago, friends of ours worked in microbiology at the university, and they had discovered an antibiotic, which was, as many people know, a lot of the big pharmaceutical companies were not investing in antibiotics because you can't get a lot of money for them, and they would prefer to invest money in these high-priced drugs. But this husband and wife team discovered in a sponge, a marine sponge from off the west coast, they just isolated a bacteria which was producing an antibiotic. That antibiotic worked in a way that no other antibiotic has ever done before. And there is a phenomenon called MSRA resistant. So you've heard hospitals will have an outbreak of a bacterium, an infection that they can't control. So there are certain antibiotics that are held back for these purposes, against killer bugs, as they call them. And this was one such molecule which was discovered here. Now, there's no reason why we couldn't have had the entire, what we call vertically integrated pharmaceutical industry, from drug discovery at UWI through into the chemistry department where they could do synthesis of the antibiotic, through into what you call scale up, so you're producing bigger quantities of this, and into the pharmaceutical industry. So a lot of people will know we have Carlisle Laboratories here, which was established, I think, in the 19th century, very, very long time ago. But they make pharmaceuticals here. There's no reason we couldn't have taken this antibiotic all the way through to being a product for Carlisle Laboratories. And that sort of discovery only comes about when you have really high quality graduates and good facilities. And as we all know, UWI has been plagued by not enough funding for years, but there's certainly the raw material there.
What did it mean for you to be one of the Cave Hill campus honorary degree recipients this year?
The honest truth is I have a big feeling of imposter syndrome. I really don't know why I deserved it, but I'm extremely honored to be given that. And when we went for the gala dinner to celebrate it, I was interviewed by somebody from UETV, and her last question was, now you've got this honorary degree, what are you going to do with it? And so the initial shock of being offered an honorary degree was, quite amazing, and I'm truly honored by it. But I think, apart from really not being sure why I deserve it, I've made sure that I am now going to deserve it by, in response to that question, I'm trying to find out what to do next. So I have several ideas. One of them is I would like to start a program in Barbados to eradicate mosquitoes here. The reason for this is my wife has now caught dengue 4 times, and the last time was just before the graduation ceremony. Both my wife and my son had it, so she was at home suffering with it, and I was in hospital with him for 2 nights, just looking after him. So I guess people don't see how debilitating these diseases are. Not only for Bajans, because it doesn't take much to look around at the economic cost of dengue, for example, but we've also had in recent years Zika, chikungunya. So we all know how much that affects Bajans. What we also don't see is that in the tourist economy, people overseas look and they go, oh, there's an outbreak of dengue in Barbados. I ain't going there. And so the entire society suffers because of that. So I think eradicating mosquito-borne diseases here would probably mean eradicating mosquitoes. I was speaking with the principal of Cave Hill, who said that many years ago, the WHO had a program for eradicating mosquitoes in the Americas, and they thought they'd succeeded, so they stopped. And now we get back to where we are today. To do that is not something I can do on my own. It is something that would require quite a team, and the more you think about it, the bigger that team becomes. So that we need people like you in broadcasting. So that's to educate people, to sensitize people to the problem of those kind of diseases. Obviously, we would need physicians, surgeons, doctors. We would need big data people. Big data is a thing whereby you can track lots of data and pull information out of it that you need. So we could do a lot more about looking at the country, finding out where mosquito outbreaks are occurring. Entomologists, so scientists who deal with insects. There's an awful lot of information around, and I think it needs someone to bring together what we call a cross-functional team to try and do something like that. The good thing, everybody since I came here has been telling me that there's lots of Bajanisms, but one of those is that at the time of independence, we started with a GDP the same as Singapore, and look at Singapore now. And everybody bemoans the fact that we aren't Singapore. But it also shows what a small society like this could do. And I think that's why the government is pushing science industry so much. Well, one of those things that a small country like this could do is decide it's going to eradicate mosquitoes.
And you would be a hero if you could do that.
I love this country, and so I would just like to be able to give something back. And so trying to do that would be a pretty tall order. It's not easy fighting against mosquitoes, but people have shown in the last year that they can eradicate malaria, again by a bit of a cross-functional team. It's not going to take one approach. It needs a few things. But who's to say we couldn't do it?
And I just want to make sure, since we're talking about eradicating mosquitoes, you said that this was supposed to be a short-term position. 26 years later, you said you still don't know what is happening. You don't have any plans of leaving anytime soon, right?
No, I mean, if we're going to eradicate mosquitoes, that's going to take a few years.
I just want to make sure that we have you here for a lot longer.
Well,
God willing.
Thank you, yeah. I mean, my wife, she has lots of friends here, so she's very happy here. The kids, this is their home, this is where they were brought up, and so they would be very annoyed if we decided to leave.
You spoke about Bajanisms. What has stood out in terms of how we do things, the way that we speak? Because when we were off camera, you were saying that was funny to you.
Yes, so my vice president of administration, she and I are always going on about different Bajanisms, and so I'm trying to mimic a few of them, like Ian and...
Give me that one again.
Ian and Artan.
Artan.
Yeah, so I just love listening to Bajans. Yeah, and sometimes when people get angry, how fast they speak.
Oh yeah, we do.
Yeah. Yeah,
we do. We do speak very quickly when upset.
Yeah, and of course, you know, with with a factory with a lot of people, you occasionally, probably once every 3 or 4 years, you might hear someone get angry with someone else, and you will hear exactly that, and you'll see.
Especially talking about cricket, because you like cricket.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of Bajans have gone off cricket though these days. Maybe, well, let's not start on the
Let's not
reasons
start.
why.
Yes, that's a good point. Let's not start.
Yeah.
But what has made you stay so long beyond the company?
Oh, it's an easy place to live. It's a really easy place to live. You can, because there's a wide variety of things to do. There's probably more things to do in this country. I think largely because it's a tourist economy. There's a lot more things to do here than probably in my own city. My own city has 1.5 million people. So there's a lot to do here. I'm a sailor. You can sail 12 months of the year here. You can't do that in New Zealand usually. So yeah, lots to keep you here.
Advice for anyone looking to set up a business that it might not be the easiest type of business to set up, but then again, is business ever easy?
I think if you think of going into business thinking it's easy, you're going to fail pretty quickly. Business is hard. It requires 100% dedication. I think too many people in the past have looked to government to subsidize their business or something like that. You hear a lot in this day and age about corruption and stuff. One of the reasons we came to Barbados is it's relatively low corruption. And I think different people will have different views on that. For me, I could never be involved in corruption. It's something that totally makes my skin crawl. So you have to be honest to yourself in business. And I think in business, you have to have a passion for what you're doing. I'm really lucky because the very first lens I ever made, which I made in Eritrea in Africa, was implanted in a patient on the road to Mount Everest in Nepal. And I met him at an eye camp we did. And he had just run down from his village high in the mountains. And he told me that when he came in for the surgery, which was 2 weeks prior, he'd been lying in his bed for 10 years, hadn't been able to see anything. And for that, he was a drain on his family. He was, the old man's in his bed and, they had to keep feeding him and everything like that, but he wasn't productive. He got the surgery, and instead of being carried down the mountain for 2 days on the back of somebody, he ran down in 4 hours. And he was just so happy that his life had changed. And I think in interviewing that old man, it changed my life as well, because I got to be in a business that meant something. And so if I take any of my staff in to see eye surgery here, they sort of go, well, some of them, they're standing there 1 minute, the next minute they've fainted, but there's no blood in eye surgery. And it's a wonderful thing to see that somebody who has had to be helped into the surgery can sit up straight after surgery and walk out. And it is life-changing to the patient. And I think to me, it's been life-changing that I can be involved in something that helps people.
Well, Mr. Hinkling, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with us this evening. We know that you're very busy overseeing operations here at Lenstec. Wonderful work being done by your team as well in terms of providing these lenses all throughout the world, especially for persons who would have had that cataract surgery. And Barbadians will hold you to that promise that you will try to eradicate mosquitoes.
All right, then.
All right, then. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
That was Mr. Ian Hinkling, the president of Lenstec Barbados Inc. I am Lisa Lord. We're watching 101. Do have yourself a wonderful evening.